Jose Sanchez Diaz disappeared on August 29, 2015. Jose was almost home when for some reason he turned his car around at 2 a.m. His cell phone last emitted an electronic signal at the Mukilteo waterfront. That was more than 6 months ago, the last time anyone had saw or heard from him. The 20-year-old Linwood man was supposed to start college last fall. His disappearance remains a mystery. Sanchez left Honduras at the age of 17 and came to Washington State. He learned English and attended Mount Lake Terrace High School and had started a job at Qdoba Mexican Grill in Shoreline. Sanchez is considered an endangered missing person according to the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office. He hasn't talked to friends or family and hasn't accessed his bank account or social media. We've had no luck in getting good tips from the public about Jose, said Sheriff spokeswoman Sharon Ireton. Detectives and families are very concerned about his safety. He liked being in high school and made many friends. He completed 3 years at school and this summer had been going through testing and being advised to start a program at Edmonds Community College. His foster mother said there is no way that he took off when he's supposed to start college next week. The foster mother described Diaz as a quiet young man with a goofy sense of humor. For the past year, Sanchez had been working as a chef at Qdoba Mexican Grill in North Seattle. He never missed work. He had used his money from the job to buy his own car, a red 1995 Mitsubishi Eclipse. He was a very huge part of our family, Danson said. He'd been really working hard to accomplish goals that he'd set for himself. Sanchez was leaving a friend's house after playing video games early in the morning of August 29th. Cell phone records and the location information showed that Sanchez Diaz was leaving his friend's house at 2 a.m. He was a few blocks from home when he turned his car around and headed to Mukilteo. There was no call or text that may have explained the change in the direction of Sanchez's car that evening. The phone quit pinging once reached at Mukilteo Beach. Police dive team has searched the surrounding waters without any success. Diaz spent last summer figuring out how to complete his high school diploma and took placement tests in order to attend community college. The family said that this is very odd. He doesn't know his way around very well. He knows Linwood and Everett, Northgate, because he works at Qdoba. And he has some friends in the area, but it shocks me that this is where the cell phone stopped pinging, because I don't think he knows where Mukilteo is, said his foster parents. Sanchez has not touched his bank account and left behind numerous pairs of shoes that he loves and wears. As the months have passed, Diaz's family remains thankful that the sheriff's investigations haven't forgotten the search for the young man who had a silly sense of humor and lots of friends. The sheriff is asking the public can help us and give us information on finding Jose. Maybe Jose is out right now enjoying the day. I would love to know that and find him, said Snohomish County Deputy Martin Weisbaum. We have no activity to find him or locate him at all. There is nothing that he has posted on social media. He did not come back to work. He has not been in contact with his girlfriend. So we're looking for any help that we can get from the public. Snohomish County Sheriff's Office says it is very unlike him. He does not have a criminal history. He is very connected with friends and family. He shows up for work on time. So for Sanchez to fall off the face of the earth, it is very concerning and very unusual. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, his last ping is at Mukilteo. So this is Mukilteo Park. This is the lighthouse. So there's a couple of problems. Number one, if his car gets in here at the boat ramp and someone takes his car and pushes his car into the ramp and then it comes into the water, the current would have had to have taken it all the way around here. Let me get this fixed. Right? Out in front of the ferry dock. All right? So the car is found out in front of the ferry dock here in 60 feet of water. So the first problem is, let me zoom out. The first problem is at 2 o'clock in the morning, the last ping on his cell phone is here. So there's only two ways that his car can get into the water here. Number one, he's done wrong. They take his car, they shove it into the boat ramp, and the current takes it around as it's slowly filling up with water and then sinks, okay? That's the first hypothesis. The second hypothesis, which doesn't make sense at all, is he gets on the ramp, he busts through the barriers, and then the car goes off the edge of the ferry dock and sinks, okay? So that's the second hypothesis. But the problem with that is if he drove his car through the ferry terminal, through the barrier, okay, the very next day, the ferry workers would have seen that, hey, there's a car that busted through the terminal. Let's look at the cameras and see what the hell happened last night. And then they would have seen that Jose's car had gone through the ferry barriers and that's where he was, okay? But guess what? That didn't happen because Jose was missing for a full year. And so since he was missing and no one knew where he was, then this theory is not part of his death, because if he would have gone off the ferry, there would have been evidence, because there's no way for a car to get through the barriers and the gate when the ferry is shut down, because this ferry is on the other side. It's on the Clinton side. It's not on Mukilteo. So there's no ferry here at night. So this theory that he drove and committed suicide off the Mukilteo ferry dock doesn't work, because there would have been evidence that he had driven his car off the ferry dock. So then we go back to the first theory. And the first theory is at Mukilteo State Park Lighthouse, he was done wrong, robbed or whatever, and somebody pushed his car down the boat ramp into the water. All right? That's the second theory. The second theory is that he met somebody, or he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they disposed of him after they robbed him. And so that is the second theory.
Hopefully we find what we're looking for, and then we can put a diver in, and he knows exactly where to go and, you know, what the conditions are there.
The search for a missing man and his car brought the Snohomish County Technical Water Rescue Team to the Mukilteo ferry dock earlier this week. They're looking for 20-year-old Jose Diaz, who went missing on August 29th. The boat ramp area is the last place his cell phone showed that he was at. Deputies used a remote-operated vehicle called a Sea Lion to look for Diaz's car. The water depth drops off quickly not far from shore. The Sea Lion has 2 cameras that give searchers a really clear image. Deputies were hoping to spot Jose's red 1995 Mitsubishi Eclipse. They found a bicycle, but no sign of the car. Jose grew up in Honduras but moved to Linwood 3 years ago, where he's been living with Chris and Carla Danson. They say he's a sweet kid with a lot of friends who was scheduled to start school at Edmonds Community College when he vanished August 29th.
This is very odd. You know, he doesn't know his way around very well. He knows Linwood, Everett, Northgate because he works at Qdoba, and he has some friends in the area. But it shocks me that this is where the cell phone's being, because I don't think he knows where Mukilteo is.
Jose hasn't touched his bank account. Detectives have talked to his girlfriend and friends. Everybody says he wasn't depressed. He had no reason to disappear. Investigators are baffled. They want to be able to give his family some kind of answer.
Maybe the public can help us and give us some information. Maybe Jose is out right now enjoying the day, and I'd love to know that.
So if you have any information that can help find Jose Diaz or his car, call the Crime Stoppers hotline at 1-800-222-TIP.
So it's 2016. Jose Diaz is missing, right? And so I'm starting to see it on the news. I see it on the news, and they're like, they found the car, and the car is underwater at Mukilteo, right? But they can't get to the car because they need to shut down the ferry. Snohomish County has to go through the paperwork and all that stuff to shut down the ferry so that they can get the divers in to get to the car, right? So they have to go through all this paperwork. They got to go through the state and do all this stuff in order to get to the car at Mukilteo. So I'm watching the news, and they say where the car is, and the car's in 60 feet of water. So then I'm thinking, well, since I'm a videographer, that I could go there when the ferry is shut down, and I can videotape the car, and then because I'm a videographer, that I can help out Snohomish County Sheriff, because they got to go through all this red tape and all this paperwork to shut down the ferry. So I get this idea in my head that I'm going to go dive Jose's car late at night. So I get all my gear, I get set up, and I get in the water at 3 a.m. So I fire up my camera gear, I get in the water, I find the car, I film the car, then I take the video, like, I don't know, a week, I think it was like a week later or a couple of days later. I take the video, I go to Everett, Snohomish County, in Rockefeller there. I go to the sheriff's, and I go up to the 4th floor, and I'm like, hey, I got the video of the car. Can I speak to a detective? Well, guess what? That was the dumbest thing that I had ever done, because once I had said that I had filmed the car and then I had been at an active crime scene, now I have 2 detectives and a sheriff with me in a room interrogating me, saying, what the hell? Why were you there? This is an active crime scene. This could be a murder investigation. Why are you there underwater filming the car when we can't get to that car because we have to shut down Washington State Ferry and we have to go through all the paperwork? So what makes you think that you could go there and do all this? So what ended up happening is they basically bitched me out for an hour in an interrogation room. And then once they finally figured out that I was just a guy trying to help and videotape and put the clues and the pieces together of Mr. Diaz, then they were like, oh, well, gee, thanks for the video, and we really appreciate it, and we really appreciate your help. But that didn't come until an hour later after they just chewed my ass. So if I had to do it all over again, I would have never dove the car, I would have never gone to the car, and I never would have filmed the car. But in a way, it did help out the sheriffs because I was able to film stuff as the car was there and untouched. But it still goes back to the same old question. And the question is, why was this kid's car there? Why was he there at 2 a.m.? Why did he disappear? Because this kid shouldn't be dead. You know, he wasn't suicidal. He didn't hate his life. He had no enemies. He had a girlfriend. He was going to go to college. He was starting a new chapter of his life. So this whole case doesn't make sense because why was his car there and who did him wrong? So my final thoughts on this, I still think about it. I still think about the how, the why, the what. I think this kid was somewhere. I think that somebody, my personal thoughts are that somebody got in his car and somebody robbed him. I think he was at the wrong place at the wrong time, and I think that they took him down to Mukilteo and they pushed his car into the water. I think that's what happened. I think he was a victim of foul play that night, and I think that he was at the wrong place at the wrong time, and somebody got him. But a couple of things that don't make sense in the video when I dove the car is the keys were in the ignition, right? The keys were in the car. He was in the front seat of the car. And if you're going to off yourself and commit suicide by driving your car into the water, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. You don't have a happy guy who's young, who's going to start college, who's living with foster parents, who has a girlfriend, and everything's going right for him. It just doesn't make sense that one night he's going to disappear and then commit suicide. Whenever we look at suicide, there's always signs, there's always telltales that the person isn't happy, so on and so forth. So what doesn't make sense to me in this case is that this kid would drive down to Mukilteo and off himself for no reason. I think he met foul play. I think somebody somewhere at some time jumped him and made him drive down there. They robbed him or whatever, and then they pushed the car into the water. So that's kind of my theory on the whole thing. It just doesn't make sense that this would be a suicide, because it doesn't look like a suicide. It doesn't fit the form or the pattern of a suicide, So I've thought about reaching out to the detectives or Snohomish County or this and that and see if they've gotten anything, but it's kind of not really my expertise, and I really don't need to know, but it's just one of those mysteries that it's kind of like, well, why? Why did it happen to such a young guy, and why was his car found under the water?